Let's play Goldilocks.
Mhm.
This Montessori is too strict. This Montessori is too unstructured. But this Montessori, oh, this Montessori is just right. If you think one of these two things is true, too strict or too unstructured, you probably aren't seeing the big picture because guess what? There is a just right Montessori. It's the real Montessori, the authentic Montessori. So maybe you, like many others, have peeked inside a Montessori classroom or watched a video of Montessori children at work and you've been thinking, what? Montessori children have to stay quiet all the time and stay at their little rugs or their little tables and quietly, independently do their work all the time. How unfun is that, right? Or maybe you have peeked inside a Montessori classroom in real life or seen online or seen homeschooling Montessori families online and you're like, what are those kids doing all day? They're just doing whatever they want. That's not teaching. That's not school. And it's just a chaotic free-for-all in your head. And they're all chatting with each other. This actually happens sometimes in Montessori classrooms. And guess what? It's wonderful when that happens. Both of these things are true at the same time.
That's right.
But
That's right. There is a delicate balance here, what we call freedom within limits. Okay, so your child has the independence to develop, but they do so in a very carefully prepared environment that guides them gently through from one experience to the next at the right time. And you can
that's
learn
right.
this rhythm that is the perfect balance between too strict and too unstructured.
Yes.
Ah, the Goldilocks zone.
The Goldilocks zone. And it's not necessarily something that you see immediately.
No.
It's one of these Montessori principles that is hidden underneath all that is going on in the environment. So in order to really let this concept of freedom within limits sink in, you would need to observe a Montessori environment for an extended period of time.
And accept that it's not going to always happen no matter how careful you are,
Correct.
because that's just the nature of teaching. You have multiple parties in that relationship. Even if you are just teaching your own children at home, they have their own set of directives that comes from within, that sort of secret voice that's guiding them forward. And it sometimes clashes with your vision. But that's why the freedom within limits mantra is so powerful.
Yes, it really is. It's a mantra. I like that you use that word. Freedom within limits is a phrase that Maria Montessori herself coined to help uh, understand the nature of this prepared environment. Because the prepared environment, I mean, I know it's a fancy sounding term, but really what we're talking about is you choosing what kinds of materials to have in your home or what toys to have in your home, how you want to arrange, and organize your space, your living space for your children. And Maria Montessori called her living space for children, her prepared environment, the Casa dei Bambini. I'm a little tongue twisted this morning. The Casa dei Bambini, because she wanted it to be a literal house for children. So when you are looking at your Montessori home and you're thinking, oh, but it's not a classroom, actually, Maria Montessori's original prepared environment, her classroom was supposed to be like a home.
Mm.
And so you're already on the right track if you're at home with your kids and you're starting with that home-like, that homey space.
Yes, that's right.
So what we want to look at today is, there are many places, many great Montessori training centers that you can go to learn to be a classroom guide, to learn how to apply that freedom of limits principle into your classroom. But we are going to talk today about how to help you as a parent implement this in your home, in
That's right.
your prepared environment.
Yeah, and so we have 4 ways that we want to formulate the concept of freedom within limits
Yes.
that I think will be pretty resonant with most folks out there. Now,
Yeah.
we have a good crowd today.
Oh,
Thanks
good.
so much for joining us. Be sure you hit the like button if you're watching this. and that really helps for some reason.
It helps the algorithm
It
for
helps
some
the
reason.
algorithms to hit the like button, please. But let's talk about freedom within limits. The first of the four is choice of work from a selection of developmentally appropriate options. So
Oof, what a mouthful.
it's a
But
mouthful, but that's why we say freedom within limits. So the freedom
yes,
is the child has the choice to choose his or her own work,
that's right.
but the limit is you've carefully curated the options before them so that they are going to meet to the child's developmental readiness.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about your child at home engaging with work, right? I'm going to contrast this with the way it would be applied in a classroom. In a classroom, generally what we think of, and you may have read this, I'm mentioning it because you may have read this on this instruction online, and it actually is a contrast between classroom teaching and
Mm.
parenting. So often what we as guides in classrooms may tell each other and help each other to form this structure in the classroom is to have the kind of guiding rule that a child needs to have a lesson from a specific work on a shelf in order to have permission to do that work.
Yep.
Okay, and it works. I will tell you, having been a classroom teacher, both in Montessori schools, private schools, and public schools, traditional, schools, like this works really, really well.
Hmm.
It is a great way to manage um, allowing a variety of developmental needs going on inside one space. You've got 20 or 30 kids in one
That's right.
room. You need to give them each individual lessons and make sure that they have lots of choices that are very appropriate for them at that right stage. And that means that you need to have a classroom full of works that are for a variety of ages and stages in
That's right.
your single classroom. Now, if you are teaching fewer children, let's say you're a parent at home, if you only got one child, everything that's on the shelf can be available for your child. And honestly, it works best if it is that way.
Hmm.
Because in a classroom, there's just something about like being the guide, being removed, not being the parent, and having so many children trying to navigate all of these different works in a classroom. Children learn within like the first 3 weeks of school, even if they're brand new to Montessori, they've never been in a Montessori environment before, just like how it works in the classroom.
Hmm.
You need to have the lesson and then you have permission to do the work. But at home, parents get tripped up in this
Mm.
because children will rebel against it. Your child lives in your home. They're going to assume
They
that
don't have to have a
everything,
lesson to play with their Legos.
right, right. And so if you were to create these very kind of more strict rules around like you have to have a lesson before you can play with something, your child might feel that rebellious tension and it might cause conflict, and they
Mhm.
might choose like to just totally ignore the shelf after that.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I don't want to do anything. You're going to give me a lesson on it, I won't do it. And some parents get caught in that. And so if
Mm.
you're here attending this live, I'm going to tell you these 4 points are actually really, really critical. And this is good information. And if you have a notepad in front of you or you want to take notes, this is something that's really crucial for making your homeschool work for you. Um, is making sure that there's no barrier between the works that are on the
Mhm.
shelves or the toys that are in your environment and your child's access to them.
Yeah, and you mean physical barriers, right?
I mean structural barriers,
Oh,
like
okay.
creating that rule of you have to have the
Mm.
lesson first before you can touch
Oh,
something,
I see.
and giving your child like so many things that they don't have permission to touch,
Yeah, so this goes with
right?
this,
So,
right? This is the plate analogy we've talked about before,
yes.
right? And so the healthy plate analogy is that you're going to set a plate of food before your child. Your child has the freedom to eat what she wants from that plate. You would love for her to eat everything on the plate, but you know that you're going to respect the child's freedom to choose and also feel confident that all the stuff you put on that plate is going to be healthy. So if they only eat the carrots and not the peas, well, the carrots are better than nothing. And I think sometimes we get in a mindset, maybe not so much
I
with
mean,
the Clean Plate
maybe they eat
Club.
the carrots this time, but tomorrow they eat all the peas.
Right.
It
I
kind of
think we have
balances
this, like the
out.
Clean Plate Club. I think sort of that idea is a little bit older, but we still have a lot of manifestations of it in our culture.
Hmm.
And it's especially true with school. Like we require the child to clean the plate. Like you have to eat everything on your plate in order to get
Yes.
a healthy diet. And that's probably true over the course of time, right? So, day to day, what you're looking to do is provide a selection of activities that are right for your child based on their age and the developmental readiness,
Right.
and then let them freely choose from that. And if they go back to the same parts card activity or an art activity or a practical life pouring activity
Hmm.
every day for a week,
And
it's
ignore
all
everything else on the shelf.
it's fine.
That's
That's a
fine. Yeah.
choice of work. That's you have the freedom to choose your work from the selection I've given you.
That's right. So here's a tip. If you want to avoid, yes, you should be giving your children lessons with the things that are
For
on the
sure.
shelves. You introduce like something new comes onto the shelf. Like first thing you should do is give them a lesson on it right away so that you're removing that barrier of like that they have to have a lesson or they don't know what to do with it.
Yes, you
Right?
brought out
Go
the
ahead
little
and demo with
pitcher
it.
and the little bowl, and you're immediately going to demonstrate the
I
technique.
mean, as soon as the time is right and your child is interested in expressing an interest in doing that activity, go ahead and give the lesson.
Yeah.
Don't make them wait for it. Don't make a big deal about them not having the lesson yet and you having other things to do. If you're going to introduce something new, you need to be ready to give that lesson.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is try not to put too many things out at one time because you physically are just going to get exhausted if you put out 10 new things on a shelf and then tell your child that they can't do any of them without having a lesson first. It's just going to be frustrating.
Yeah,
So,
it's called the oppression of choice. It's a real thing.
yeah,
You know, marketers know all about it, but it's just a human condition. We experience it in all kinds of ways, and it's also true for you and your child. If you give them every single an option to choose every single level 3 activity from the curriculum,
hmm,
there'll be too many, and they will get locked in and overwhelmed, and you
yes,
will too.
yes.
So curate that list.
That's right. So a good way to navigate that choice of work freedom would be to start with the toys that your child already has. Like
Mm,
whatever's already in your house is probably mostly great. Maybe you have some decluttering to
yeah.
do, or you could pick
I
and
got
choose.
blocks or
But
stuffies or
don't just
dolls. And,
add a ton of new stuff right away. Add it slowly, slowly build this prepared environment. And we teach parents how to do this in our membership program. We talk a
mhm,
lot about how to build up your subject areas without getting overwhelmed. And if you're
yeah,
in primary, I would usually tell you to start with either sensorial or practical life.
for sure.
Just focus on that subject area first rather than trying to make sure that all 10 subject areas or all 8 in primary are all available all at once. It's just going to be overwhelming. And if you kind of build up those new activities that are in the environment that your child has the choice to work with, then it's just going to be much smoother for you.
Yeah, so to be really specific, for those of you in our community, and we know a lot of folks who watch are members or recent members, the advice we always give, and this is why we do it this way, is if you're new, start with the theme of the month, the
Yeah.
study of the month. This month it's pets. Last month it was dandelion. If your kids aren't into pets or dandelion for whatever reason, I can't imagine a little guy not being into pets. But if they weren't, go pick another theme from the library. There's 50 of them in the library for you to choose from,
That's right.
and only do that.
Yeah.
Only do the lessons in that. Get the books that go with it, do the art that goes with it,
Right.
do the linear calendar that comes with it, and do the 10 activities that are part of it. It's a good way to kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah, or
And
pick from them.
yeah,
We also help with this oppression of choice by creating little
Yeah, these cards, the planning
planning
cards.
cards for you. And so, yeah, there's one in every single theme.
Mhm.
And many of our members find success by just focusing on like just a couple activities to focus on first. And so they are ordered week by week.
Yeah.
You could just, but you don't have to worry, like maybe you don't get to everything that week. Just, keep your card for the next week. But it, limiting the things that we're looking at, you're right, also helps with that oppression of choice for
Yeah.
us too. So it's not just for children, it's also for homeschool parents
Yeah,
as well.
less is more,
Yeah,
right? So
it's a
when
good
choice
point.
of work for that selection of developmentally appropriate options with the idea that less is more. So for example, in our curriculum, in a week, we might suggest 2, maybe 3 new activities from Constellation. You might only do that for the first 2 or even 3 months of your time with Child of the Redwoods because for one thing, it's totally healthy for the child. You're giving them a complete plate.
Yeah.
Through the course of going through those activities, they're going to cover all the course subjects. But more than that, it's going to give you a chance to acclimate and find your rhythm. And then once you're ready, you'll start to introduce the foundational lessons. And that's where you'll use our system where you have the constellation is the heart of the week. And then
Hmm.
depending on the age of your child, you're going to pick up to 4 additional cards. If they are a 2 or 3 year old, you're going to do practical life and sensorial. If they're 4 to 7 or 8, you're going to do reading and writing and math plus 2 others. And if they are 8 or 9, then just pick any of the any 4 subjects you want to cover, and you're only going to do 1 lesson from that card. So it's not a lot. It helps curate it down. Less is more, and it allows for something we've talked about a bunch:
Mm,
repetition. We
yeah,
talked about that last week, I think. In fact,
we
you
did.
want to give them time. That's another reason you want to give them a selection to do things over and over and over. That's where freedom within limits is not just a way about keeping your sanity, it actually is better for your child.
That's right.
Okay.
Um, Friends, I want to know if you have questions about any of this. I know we're wading deep into Montessori theory. So if you have any questions about how this works for you in real life, or if you have any suggestions for parents who might be new out there to Montessori and trying to navigate this, we would love to see that in the comments here.
Yeah.
Okay, so choice of work, give your child the freedom to choose their own work. You set a limit by preparing their environment with a plethora of wonderful things for them to choose from,
Maybe
right?
not a plethora, a small plethora.
A limited plethora of things. It's one of my favorite words,
Yeah.
of things to choose from. All right, second thing that you
Yeah.
can do at home to provide both freedom and limits for your child.
You can let them choose to work alone or with peers on creative, meaningful tasks.
Right.
So the freedom is, do you want to do this by yourself? Do you want to do it with your brother and sister, or your friends, or your classmates, depending on their environment?
Hmm.
And the limit is,
Or work with you.
oh, of course, or work with mom or dad.
Hmm. Which
And
is
the
totally legit at a
absolutely
homeschool. Yeah, it would not be common in a Montessori classroom.
right.
Right? And so that's where this is different. This is for parents, this is for homeschoolers, but I mean, not that they couldn't, but that like there are huge benefits to it.
Hmm.
There's just a lot of kids in a Montessori classroom.
That's right. So you have the freedom, little guy.
Yeah,
You can choose whether you want to work alone or with someone else, like
that's right.
mom or dad. The limit is on a creative, meaningful task, right?
Right.
So if you set up a time for school, which is
We call it the work
the
cycle
work
or the
cycle,
3 hour work
exactly.
period. Yeah.
Basically, there's a time, and it's going to vary the amount of time.
Hmm.
It's going to vary based on your child's age and your approach and other factors. But in general, there's some kind of time where you're going to try and allow for the work cycle to present. And during that time, you give them, they have that choice, right? The freedom of choice. And now they've gone and picked it, and they can choose to do it by themselves or with another, as long as they're working on it in a meaningful way.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so working with peers is super healthy. A lot of parents come to us worried that their child isn't doing independent work.
Mm.
And there are there are a lot of problems with this concept of independent work. Independence is something that children naturally strive for. It's within every single human being to want to become empowered and to feel like they can do things by themselves. And as part of growing up, it's a process that I think that we still continue to work through as
Oh, for
adults.
sure. Yeah.
You know, learning how to do certain things for ourselves or just our own journey of growing and changing and learning new things and becoming more empowered people, right? So it's not something that's only for children, it's also for adults.
Totally.
But that doesn't mean that it's your job to enforce your child to work by themselves in order to become independent, or that the whole goal of a Montessori education is for a child to be working alone.
Or the inverse. A lot of parents worry about socialization,
That's true.
right?
Yeah, that's
And so
true.
they're worried that if their child works alone too much, they'll miss out.
Yep.
And if you're doing homeschooling correctly, that won't be an issue.
Mhm.
And I'm going to say correctly. I know that's a bit of a judgment,
No,
but
I agree with
to
you.
homeschool correctly is to make sure that your children have lots of social interaction in various kinds of ways: park days, field trips,
Among
going to
a variety
church,
of
going
age groups
to
as well.
scouts,
Yeah,
whatever it is, right?
that's right. So yes, so children can choose to work by themselves. They can choose to work with peers or another adult. That is a total freedom choice. Limits that might come in that are relevant for parents in particular could be if your child is constantly asking you to work with them
Mm,
and you're not enjoying it and you really want to be doing your own thing, it is perfectly legitimate to put a limit on it. To say, like, sure, I will play pretend with you and sit here together, or we will work on Legos together for 20 minutes and then I need to go do something else.
and that's
And
that creative
you
and
can set
meaningful
a
part.
timer. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally fine to do that. And yes, your child might be disappointed. They might whine. They might tantrum, they might cry, they may try to sway you or like persuade you to stay. It is okay for you to set a limit. All right. You don't
Absolutely.
have to be playing with your child every single minute in order for them to grow and learn. And so, yes, there is freedom to choose to work in a social environment or alone, but also you have that choice as well as the parent to work alone or alongside. And you know that it is beneficial for children for you to be working with them sometimes, but also not all the time.
I'm going to say something controversially old school. I'm going to say that the best freedom comes from self discipline.
What? Is that controversial?
I don't know. I'm just saying it as though it were, yeah, like learning to have self discipline and self control is the path to the greatest freedom, right? Because
Mhm.
you, I think, in a way, I mean, because you have a sense of who you are, you trust in yourself, you know your limits, but you also are respectful for others. You are not creating a disaster. So, another example might be Maya is carefully playing, working with the brown stairs. And
Okay.
here comes her brother, Liam. And he's like, my turn. I want to play too.
Ah.
Right? That's not a
Well,
respectful
wait. I'm
approach.
imagining what Maya's going to do
Well, what is
next.
she going to
She's going to shove Liam
do?
away
Also, not okay.
and say, go away, right?
That's right.
Or she's going to get really frustrated. Or she's going to let Liam just take over her work and she'll go do something else.
Yeah. So
Right. So, yeah, that's a great example of some places where we can put limits
that's
in
right. Because
action.
maybe, Maya has chosen to work alone. Liam is wanting to work with his sister, and a conflict arises. And that is pretty common in the home. We had somebody
Yeah.
talk about this a couple weeks ago on the show. Like, the little guy wants to do whatever a big sister is doing, and that interferes with the work. What do you do about that? Well, this is where you have to set up those creative, meaningful tasks and also be understanding what is developmentally appropriate for the two. And this is where you have to intervene to protect Maya's time.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
it's true. One child will have a priority and the child, that the answer is it's the child who's concentrating that gets the priority.
If she's in her work cycle and really
If she's
focused,
focused,
don't disturb her.
then we've got to protect her first. And at the same time, like Liam obviously does have the desire to interact with her, and he needs to know like when is an appropriate time.
That's
And
right.
so, in that particular situation, a little mediating is often helpful, to have a little negotiating and explain to Maya that Liam would like to work with her, and to ask her, like, is there a time
Yeah, exactly.
where you and Liam could work together? And when might that be a good time for her? And let Maya choose.
And
So
Maya
another
might initially
example.
say, I don't want to at all. And
Yeah,
then this is where you're going to guide through the conversation and say, actually, it's important to work together and to
that's right.
be brother and sister, and we love each other. So, how can we solve that? Okay, so that's the second one, work alone or with peers
Okay.
on meaningful tasks. Now, the third one is
To move.
move at
Let
will.
let your child move in any way that they want. If you think about, I don't know, if you grew up in the Montessori school or a very I was going to say unstructured environment because there are unstructured schools out there. Like,
For sure.
if you grew up in an environment where you were able to move around at choice, I did have the privilege of going to a Montessori school from when I was in preschool through third grade. And I had lots and lots of freedom of movement. And I don't remember it ever being an issue, me or my body being in a position where people were um, uncomfortable with what I was doing. I got up and went to the bathroom when I wanted to. I moved. My little Montessori school in elementary was like a little house. And so
Yeah,
I freely moved from room to room to room, just like it was, it felt like it was a house,
sure.
and so they had a kitchen and had little different rooms with lots of shelves and different things to work with. And I didn't feel restricted at all. But contrast that with a typical classroom where teachers have 20 or 30 kids in one single room, and children are generally controlled in their bodies.
Mhm.
We tell children to sit crisscross applesauce with their hands in their lap.
Don't
You
touch your
know,
neighbor. Don't
that's
talk to
right.
your
No
neighbor.
touching. Don't touch your
Don't get out
neighbor.
of your seat unless you raise your
Keep
hand.
your hands to
Don't
yourself.
leave the classroom.
Asked to leave the bathroom, but not while the teacher is talking or giving a lesson.
Or never ask.
Taking
Don't ask because you can't go.
right, or just don't ask.
Now,
It's
these
just
rules
right.
are, as public school teachers, I will tell you that these rules,
Put your hands behind your back when walking in a
yeah,
line in the
these
hall.
rules
Like,
are created because it
whew,
is a lot to handle, right?
it
And hats
is.
off to all teachers who work in environments where you've got a lot of kids, and
Yep.
it's just very, very challenging. And you see that all the way up through high school. I taught in high school. You'd have thousands and thousands of kids in a campus. I remember when some of the classrooms I had 40 or 50 students. They were just stuffed to the gills. And classroom management was a big part of what you spent your time doing. And so I think from that comes these rules that limit movement. Unfortunately, they tend to work counter to the purpose, right? The actual method, and I'm not making this up, this is common knowledge amongst educational professionals. The best way to achieve classroom discipline is through good curriculum and teaching. If you engage the children, they will become more likely to engage in a respectful way. It's actually the more that we prohibit and limit that we tend to have more challenges. And so, in the Montessori approach, the freedom to move at will is important.
Yep.
But it's not just helter skelter, right? It's a move at will in a respectful, kind, and courteous manner, right?
That's right.
This is the self discipline piece again. So the limit is when you move, you must be respectful, courteous, and kind.
That's right.
So what does that mean?
Um, well, what's coming to mind immediately is the grace and courtesy lessons that we give children in our practical life curriculum in Montessori. These are lessons designed to help your children navigate social situations. And so they might involve lessons like, let's say Maya's working with those brown stairs on a rug, and we might have we might observe this interaction between Liam and Maya and decide to teach a grace and courtesy lesson about not interrupting someone when they're working, or about how to get up and walk around someone's
Yeah.
rug without disturbing them. Or let's say you're going to go into an environment where it's really important that you have good body control.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, like, what if you take your children, you hear of this great opportunity where you can get cheap tickets to your local symphony, family friendly concert. You're going to dress the kids up in their finest and you're going to go see a concert, right?
Yeah.
Well, there are certain social rules that we have in those kinds of environments. Like, that is not a place to run around and be wild. That's not a place to yell, or
Don't jump on the
you can't,
seat.
right, or
Don't horse
climb
around.
over. Our kids would look at those auditorium chairs and they'd be like, playground. Like, you could tell, like, as soon as we walked in, like the little twinkles in their eyes, and we would just be like, okay, we could tell, like, what they really wanted to do was like hurdle
Yes.
hurdle over the entire auditorium set of chairs, right? Or those seats that flip up and back. Like, as soon as you sit in the seat, the children are like,
it's a catapult. Oh, what can I launch from this?
Right. So those kind of situations can be prepared for, and the way you would do that is by talking about the ways that we can hold our bodies and helping our children to practice them. So, example, you might give your child a lesson about ways to move in this environment and say, when we go to the concert, people move in a very special way. We walk with grace, and we might put our hands down by our sides and walk like this, or we might put them behind our backs and walk like this, or we might clasp them in the front, or we might hold hands as we walk, and you get to choose. You get to choose how you would like to walk.
So this is movement at will. You have freedom to choose, but it goes back to that first example, within limits, right? Like, you can, you have a range of options. Like, your options don't include catapulting off the seat. They do include walking with your hands behind your back, or holding hands or in front of you, or maybe holding on to your purse or your stuffy or whatever, or a bag if you brought it, or whatever it might be, right? You've given them a range of options that are respectful, kind, and courteous to the environment and to the people and the other critters that might be in there, if you're at a petting zoo, for example.
All right, finally, number four is to give your children the ability to choose to follow their own interests.
Freedom to follow your interests.
Freedom to choose whatever they're interested in and and then I guess this kind of relates back to that first one about what to work with afterwards. But really, we're talking about, like, they have the choice about what they are actually interested in learning about. And so when we start with a theme like this, some of our parents might say, but what if my child isn't interested in pets exactly?
Yeah, they don't have a pet, or just not interested in them. We get this one a lot or more often with, like, the geography type ones. Like, we studied mountains.
Yep.
Well, I live in an area where it's flat. There are no mountains. How do I show them mountains? It's not really relevant. My son's not interested in mountains.
So there's two suggestions that we can make that have to do with this freedom to follow your child's interests. And one is that a lot of people don't know that we have, do 50. We have 50 now? Have we reached the number 50? We have
reached the number 50.
We have half of 100 themes. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine what that would look like in our member site.
500, guys.
We have 1/10 of 500 themes in our member site right now, and another 12 or 9 to 12 at least that are, like, coming.
Well, we do one every month, and then if you're in the complete or unlimited curriculum, you get access to not only the new theme, like pets, you get everything that we've published since mid-2021, and that's 50 themes in total, covering a huge variety of topics. So
if your child, if you really just, like, your child is very firm that they don't want to learn about pets right now, you've got, like, 50 other themes in the library, 49 other
Yep.
themes in the library at this point to choose from that you can present to your child and say, hey, let's pick something that you are interested in. And a lot of families do that.
They do. We're really excited because our vision was that we would have a page or something, and in this case, we eventually would settle at a page where you could show your kids all the different themes, and they'd have fun, colorful covers, and they could pick the one
That's right.
that spoke to them at that time.
That's right.
And they're now leading the learning. They're following their interest, and because it's curated, they're getting that healthy diet.
That's right. And our members also submit theme ideas all the time based on the things that their children are interested in learning about for us to create in the future. Now, that's one approach that you can take. You can say, pets is not appealing to my child. I'll pick something else from the member in the member library.
Yeah.
But that's not the only approach that we recommend that you do with your kids. We recommend that you actually go ahead and present the lessons that are in a thematic unit. Why? Because if your child is not exposed to just like a wide variety of different subject areas and lessons and things out in the world that they might want to go and research or be interested in, then they just won't have that general knowledge of what's out there in the world.
Yeah, so this goes to the plate idea. Like, if your kid's
Yeah.
only been eating carrots for the last week, don't only serve them carrots.
Mhm.
I mean, in our analogy.
Yeah.
Continue to serve them the whole plate of whatever you've made because you're exposing them to that. You're giving them a chance to explore it. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, so when you do use a theme from Child of the Redwoods, they are based off of a variety of different subject areas. We take that interdisciplinary approach to learning. And so in here, you're going to find reading activities, you're going to find writing activities, you'll find here's music. So there's a lot of exposure going on. And then as you present these lessons, you're going to be observing your child. We talk about observation a lot. We won't really go into that in this particular episode.
Nope, but we've done a bunch of them before.
So go back and check those out. You're going to observe your child to see what they're interested in based on the lessons that you're giving them. And so what you're looking for is that spark. So maybe you present a grammar activity and your child's like, nah. But then you present the music scales activity and your child's like, loving it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the kind of feedback you're looking for that will help you to allow your child that freedom to follow their own interests. And so,
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
We're kind of like pulling a full circle here, and then you're going to give them the choice of among some new things that you present again for them to repeat if they want, and it just continues in a beautiful, beautiful way.
So I love that. What I want to make sure we talk about though is the limit, because we did say freedom within limits.
We did. What's
so
the
the
limit?
freedom is following your interest. I mean, there has to be some limit to that, right?
For sure.
But what is that limit? What is the limit to the following your interest?
I mean, I think children can choose to learn about whatever they want, but there's still going to be practical boundaries in what you can allow for them. Here's an example. Like when our children were learning about, when our oldest was learning about math, he happens to have a very deep interest in math and science.
He loves math.
Loves math, and the Montessori lessons were very intuitive to him. Not so intuitive for me. I have to practice with those materials because I'm not really a math person, but they were very intuitive for him as a child with that natural interest. But he just wanted to keep scaling up bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I would present numbers like, well, let's multiply, 23 times 3,244, which is a really big problem.
Mm-hmm.
And he would pose back to me, would say, no, I want to multiply 53,863 by 999,888,500, right? I mean, so, and I'm like, that is a really big number to multiply. And so sometimes like the things that he was interested in going, the places he was interested in going with math were kind of beyond what we could do with our current materials. But we took them as far as we could.
Yeah.
And then I would say like, this is the limit of what we can do with this material. We would have to design a new material in order to, perform that, make a gigantic checkerboard the size of your living room or something, which, one could choose to do. But that was kind of an example of like a natural limit that we
Yes.
found with the materials.
I think another natural limit that a lot of folks will relate to if they've got little guys
Okay.
is, let's say they want to do a pouring activity
Mhm.
and they're really excited about pouring the water, or let's say it's, yes,
I'm also thinking like this happens with lentils too, right?
lentils, sand. Let's say they're doing the life science activity about care for plants. And
Okay.
they're a 2 or 3 year old, and that activity asks them to water the plants.
Okay.
So plants are thirsty,
That's a
bugs are
good
not
example.
thirsty.
Mm.
So follow your interests, but be sure that you are working within the limits of the materials environment
Yeah.
and other creatures.
And you are limiting them by the kinds of materials you give them. And that's actually a really great example because when you're talking about watering plants, I think there's like kind of two methods to do it. You can teach your child to stick their finger into the dirt and feel to see if the roots are dry or not. And maybe you're looking up the needs of that particular plant, and that's a great way to do it, especially good if you're a plant enthusiast and you know a lot about caring for plants. The relaxed approach to doing that would be to modify the size of the watering can.
Yes.
And so my technique with that is give your child the very smallest watering can that you possibly
Dollhouse
could find.
size.
And so I know I did. I found like a
Yes.
tea set size watering can. It held about, I think the smallest watering can I had held about like 3 thimblefuls of
Yes.
water,
Yeah.
or like 3 tablespoons full. And then children could just water those plants, those big plants that we had, as many times
Because
as
they're
they
not going to overwater
wanted.
them, and if they spill it, it's not a big
Yeah.
deal.
We're talking about the little ones. Of course, if your child is in elementary, they definitely should be sticking their finger in and like having
But you're going to
patience.
scaffold that up because you're going
Yeah.
to give them the simple. Goes back to that first
Yeah.
freedom within limit. You're going to give them the materials that are appropriate to their developmental readiness. So, and then let them choose. So they want to do plant watering. We'd love that. That's a classic or plant care of various kinds. Awesome. Put that on your shelf. That's a good one to do. Just make sure that the kinds of materials or lessons that they're going to work on are appropriate for their age. So don't give them the big jumbo can if they're 3. Maybe start out with the little bitty one, and after
Unless
they,
you're outside.
yeah, sure. And then as they, they'll learn the procedure, they'll feel more confident, and then you'll scale up from there. It's the same with using sharp objects. Like in Montessori, we certainly did this, and I know a lot of folks do too. Like allowing children to use knives to cut seems scary, but they can after they've been taught the lessons that lead up to it, and they can actually use them pretty well with supervision. Always follow your own instincts.
That's right. All right. So to review, you're giving children their choice, the freedom to choose their work, the freedom to work alone or with peers or you, if they so choose, within limits, the freedom to move at will, as long as they're being respectful with their bodies, and the freedom to follow their interests.
Yep, that's
Okay.
right.
Within the limits that you give them that are reasonable. All right. So Montessori really is just right, just like
right.
Goldilocks found. Um, it really is. It's a flexible structure. There is structure within, but there are also very clear boundaries that we give children. And all of this works together to create children who are both independent and loving and sociable, children who are
Responsible and
responsible.
joyful.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the good things. And if this resonates with you, our Montessori complete curriculum is available at childoftheredwoods.com. And if you have questions, there's a little chat box there. You can reach out to us anytime if we're not live and we're sleeping. And we will answer personally. It's not an AI bot.
Nope.
And you can also email us if that's easier for you. And that email address is hello@childoftheredwoods.com.
Absolutely. We have a comment here. Sarah says, we had to pivot for June from pets, and I let my son look through the themes for the first time. It
Yeah.
was cool. It was so cool. He was so excited when he saw caves as an option.
Yeah.
We are going to explore caves on Thursday.
Oh, that was
Awesome.
a beautiful unit too.
It's a
Caves
fun
was,
one. There's a lot of fun activities. The community really loved
oh
it. I
my
don't
gosh, it
think you
was
had
very
joined.
popular.
Yeah, that was before you joined. So I'm sure there's actually a lot of good advice on the still in the community around
If you look
caves.
in our community and you do hashtag cave, often our members will tag the themes inside those discussion posts.
Yeah, and you can see
So you can
photos
go
of what
back
they
and look.
did and adaptations. It's a good
Yes, I
unit.
think you'll love it.
And I love that this is exactly what we had hoped would happen, right? Like any of those themes are going to be good. There's going to be good stuff in there because they're all based on the Montessori lessons.
Yep.
If caves are applicable because you're going to go explore a cave or it just speaks to the kid for some reason, great. Grab that. It's going to be fun. And the same goes for the cards. When you're using the foundational cards, I don't know that you've started to introduce these yet, Sarah, but for those of you who are using the cards, you're at the point where you're blending in the foundational cards. If your kids are in lower elementary, let them pick cards. They are old enough to have input on it, and it'll make the learning much more meaningful. If they're little guys, then you'll choose them for them with their maybe input. And the younger they are, the less input they'll have. But yeah, by the time they're 8 or 9, I would say they should be tracking their own work through the cards and working through them and fully in control of their own learning. That's actually
That's
what
right.
we want to get to.
Yep.
So you're on the right track. That's a great first step.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay.